You have the ability to cross-sell. I imagine through the organization, you're going to be able to connect with lots of customers that could use now or in the future some other elements that you've set up.
That's fairly well said. And, we could probably even step that back, and we have something called the member journey, whether you're a private entity or a state local entity, where, if you will, using the controls framework, we meet that particular entity where they are in their security journey.
These sound like the problems that smaller businesses are not often able to address. Is that true? Or do you also have a kind of a portion of your offerings that makes sense for smaller businesses?
We serve our state local customers with our services business here, which is more like a classic managed security service provider business, where we deliver kind of core services like a managed detection, response, things of that nature that your listeners might use for their baby business as well.
Steven, welcome to Product Growth Stories. So happy to have you on the show. And you're an SVP for sales and business services at CIS Security. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, as we get started, can you tell us what is CIS Security?
Sure, Jean-Michel. So CIS is one of the nation's largest nonprofits focused on cybersecurity. We were born about 25 years ago, and we also happen to run what is called the multi-state ISAC. So we run the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center in partnership with a number of state governments, previously in partnership with DHS and CISA. And we so joining you from Austin, Texas today. So it's great to be with you, Jean-Michel, and thanks for asking me. Happy to dig in on the business itself and kind of give you a quick view if you'd like.
Yeah. So, I'm sure a lot of people, most of our audience is in the tech space, either in SaaS or in consulting. So I'm sure a lot of people are familiar, but not everybody is super aware about, they're not all CISOs, right? Not everybody knows about security. So can you tell a little bit more, like what happens, like why do people join the organization and, what do they get from a membership with you outside of, say, state agencies, but why do individuals and corporations choose to join?
So it's a bit interesting because we effectively got 5 different businesses that we operate that are somewhat interconnected. And so most folks will know CIS from what's called the CIS controls or the CIS benchmarks, which are kind of core cybersecurity controls framework, similar to what you would have with NIST and others. And we happen to operate what are core set of businesses. So you've got the multi-state ISAC, which is one piece of the, again, national security that we operate. We also have what's called our Secure Suite business, which is your classic kind of think of a GRC platform for your small business to larger businesses that are looking to leverage our CIS controls and benchmarks. That's
what's GRC, just to
governance, risk, and compliance.
Define that one.
Okay. GRC, governance,
Gotcha.
risk, and
risk and compliance.
Like you would have with your Dratas and your Vantas of the world today. We offer a tool really focused in on taking the controls that we build and the benchmarks that we deliver and allowing organizations to operate those. Again, thinking about how to explain it in basic terms, we also have what's called a hardened images business, which is, if you think partnering with, if you were to go into Amazon Web Services or Azure, we deliver what are secure configurations in public cloud marketplaces. That's a pretty significant business for us. And then finally, we serve our state local customers with our services business here, which is more like a classic managed security service provider business, where we deliver kind of core services like a managed detection, response, things of that nature that your listeners might use for their daily business as well.
Yeah. So it's tremendous. It's tremendous. So just to go over that again, one thing is sort of like one business unit is a little bit like an MSP for hardened solutions if you need security. I'm not even going to be able to remember all of these. The other would be having like standards that you could license or use so that hey, I'm hitting a third-party standard of security, not just some consultant said it's good enough for us. It's actually an official standard that we can all understand. For different like threat models, you might need a certain standard. And then so many other elements, including cooperating with governments to share, what's going on in the security space. So it sounds like a very large enterprise. And so how are you, which part are you involved with for growing it as a sales leader?
I'm blessed to be involved with all of them. And we often laugh that we drive each of those businesses they kind of grown up unintentionally around each other, Jean-Michel. And that's something that we work really hard at is we call that cross collaboration amongst all of the different businesses and trying to gain leverage from those businesses. So if you think about how you might serve a state local community with the multi-state ISAC, it's how do we not only serve those members by delivering them a community experience and basic tools so that they can get better at their cybersecurity posture, but then it's also how do we leverage some of the capabilities that we built on our own, again, the hardened images in public cloud, to help, say, a state local entity or even a private entity who wants to leverage our controls, intellectual property to get better at security. How do we give them that tooling in a simplistic way and really tie those
Hmm.
different businesses together? But as far as the go to market, they oftentimes we have effectively 4 or 5 different go to market experiences that,
Hmm.
again, coordination and alignment is a really challenging storyboard for us here at CIS and something we work on a daily basis to drive those businesses together.
So just to see if I'm tracking with you, I feel like another way to say what you said is that there are sort of one part of it is finding people's problem and also making sure you have definitions and then you have kind of solutions and products related to solving the problems that you've found and defined. And then you have the ability to cross sell. I mean, I imagine through the organization, you're going to be able to connect with lots of customers that could use now or in the future some other elements that you've set up.
That's fairly well said. And, we could probably even step that back and we have something called the member journey, whether you're a private entity or a state local entity, where, if you will, using the controls framework, we meet that particular entity where they are in their security journey. And then to your point, we've then got tooling either in-house or through our partner relationships with manufacturers, your Palo Alto Networks, your Microsofts, et cetera, where you can leverage third parties to address those cybersecurity gaps and, grow your cybersecurity posture, enhance your cybersecurity posture as an entity, whether you're state, local, or private.
And is this all I mean, I'm just guessing, but this sounds like enterprise level problems. These sound like the problems that smaller businesses are not often able to address. Is that true? Or do you also have a kind of a portion of your offerings that makes sense for smaller businesses?
We serve interesting. So again, Jean-Michel, good question. We serve quite a few of what we would call the cyber underserved in the state local education community. And so
I love
you've
that.
got
The cyber underserved.
well, and that may look like you might have a librarian who's also the security engineer for her county, right? And
Mhm.
that's a really challenging place for those individuals to be, particularly as you think about, how do you deliver them an operational technology rather than something that they've got to work on or work with, right? Because they don't have the time, effort, and
Yeah.
energy to take that and say, I'm going to go learn about endpoint security today. So we do offer solutions for
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
individuals, but our controls and benchmarks are largely adopted by enterprises. So again, this is one of the challenges that not in all of the businesses that I've managed over the years on the revenue side of the house, it's probably the most interesting because we have such a diverse set of businesses that serve different constituencies. And so it's
Mhm.
been really interesting to think through how do we drive that again. And that's where I started with that alignment and coordination challenge across all of those businesses. But yes, we serve your smallest entities to your 1 to 5 person cities, so the city of Yuma in Arizona, all the way up to your PepsiCos and other large entities.
Mhm. And, like, you mentioned that you have a user journey in mind or that you're working on. How do people typically learn about CIS? Like, what's the most common way? And maybe it depends by which persona, but just in general, like, how do people learn about you?
So most people are familiar. If you're in the cybersecurity world, most folks are familiar with what are called, again, the CIS controls or the benchmarks. And those are kind of the two foundational as a not-for-profit that's out to enhance the nation's security that we really anchor on and support. So those are kind of your fundamental, how do you get better at cybersecurity? And the thing that, and you could talk to somebody like a Matt Lee from a PAX 8, or other, organizations that are out to drive security. The really interesting thing that CIS does is we take the concept of, say, a simple security control. And we give the how behind it. We don't just tell you this is the thing. We tell you this is the
Hmm.
thing and give you guidance on how you might do that. And so again, those controls and benchmarks are how most folks know us today. The second
Hmm.
is, Jean-Michel, is because we do run the multi-state ISAC and we have 18,000 members that participate in that organization today that are state, local, tribal, territory organizations. That's the other big awareness that we drive for our organization.
Yeah. So it's either you're either finding new people through governments and being aware that they need security. So it's like in the security community of the government, or it sounds like it's somebody that's a security professional is joining an organization and they're going to know about you because that's embedded in some of the standards.
Correct. Correct. That's exactly right. And
Yeah.
that's again where if you think about product growth stories and the work that you're thinking through, and is how you and you know your entity thinks about how do I help people grow their business. One of the core challenges we have is how do I, with a limited team, right? We're a anybody to read about us, we're $150 million business, and you can go see our financials. They're publicly available as a not for profit. But how do we go drive engagement across those
Yeah.
multiple businesses when we're serving so many different entities? And that's really one of those where you've got to
How do
do a
you do it? How do you do it?
we're
Yeah.
still trying, right? But it goes
Yeah.
back, you start with focus, and focus leads into things like your standard ideal customer profiles and all the good things that everyone does from a basic approach perspective. But the
Yeah.
compelling thing for us these days is I think is probably true for a lot of people that might be listening to this is how do I organize that against the current tool set that's available and the current resources that I have from a selling perspective and a marketing perspective? And that's been something we've been working on since I joined the organization in January of this year, and really simplifying and aligning that focus because we've got a state, local, tribal, territorial, team that goes and operates with those entities. And that looks like, great, where are our solutions best fit? To your point, are we selling to, the state of Texas, or are we selling to the city of Yuma, or, Llano County in Texas, right? It's who are we selling? In a lot of ways, we're selling to all of them, but where do our services best serve? And refining that and then delivering that message out in a meaningful way. And for us, interestingly enough, Jean-Michel, what we've been able to do is largely use the fact that we are a thought leader out in the cybersecurity market space to really be our path to educate and drive, interactions with our target market, the people that we serve. And so that's been, a lot of fun. You can look at the Department of Education in South Carolina. They leverage our controls out with all of their K-12 entities. As an example, they roll
Hmm.
those out across the state. You can see in the state of Texas, they just recently joined both the MSISAC as a statewide member, but they also use our controls for what is called safe harbor, where to help you, effectively meet a requirement that says, what your accountability level in that state is legally
Yeah.
with regards to the breach. So that's a lot of the work we do is around just educating people on the basics of
Education. That makes a
cybersecurity.
lot of sense, especially given like what kind of organization you are. Like that's yeah, sounds totally aligned with what the image that I have of CIS. And one question, I'm not sure the right way to phrase it, but I've always wondered this is how do you see the difference between how you as a somebody in the security professional space see security versus an organization that needs it? Because it's well, I have this impression that a lot of companies, it's, if there's an emergency, suddenly it's going to become really important, whereas it wasn't before. And then a lot of people, I think, kind of look at it as like a compliance burden. It's a little bit of a slowdown of kind of the price you pay to be big, that you need to check some boxes. What do you think is the right, do you have how would you recommend that people who aren't in the security space, like what would you tell them to get them to have a more accurate impression about how to value this, how to judge the importance of a security setup?
So we've got a great insurance of cyber. We have a great paper out there called Cost of Cyber Defense, which is
Hmm.
we've talked about that journey. And so it's kind of meeting an entity where they are in that journey. So the first is, asset management. Do you know where all your laptops are? Yes, no, right? Do you know what systems you're accountable and responsible for? And that's that very first control. And so when you talk about how do you help people understand where they are in their security journey and kind of creating
Mhm.
value around that? For us, it's more about like, look, you can diminish your risk of an attack or cybersecurity risk by going through this set of very basic steps. And we basically want to take them through that journey and say, hey, great. And when you're able to find more budget and you want to reduce your risk level, here's that next step in that journey, whether that's again, endpoint security, asset management, or it's as complex as something like cloud posture management that you might do with some of the tooling
Mhm.
in public cloud. But again, it's really about assessing where someone is, what's their available
Mhm.
budget, and then how do you get efficient with it? Like we're consistently surprised at how much people spend on tools that they never use or leverage. And so again, if you're
Yeah.
kind of saying your journey looks like going from 0 to 51, where are you, right? Or are you really at 10 or
Mhm.
did you skip step 6, 7 and 8 and you need to go back and
Mhm.
operate against those? But that's really what it's about is kind of following a path and a journey. And people appreciate that because you're not just, again, this is the other thing that's great, Jean-Michel. You don't have a lot of not-for-profit folks come on the show. But one of the things that we're able to do
No.
is
Yeah.
take a position, hey, we're here to fund the mission, but our mission is to make you more secure. And so we're a trusted partner in doing that as compared to saying, hey, here's widget number one. And I think a lot of the
Mhm.
vendors in the security space today oftentimes run towards the widget is a little bit better than the other as compared to saying, where are you in your true security journey? And does the widget that I have, is that really going to affect your
Yeah.
business in a meaningful way?
This is a
Or
human
reduce
nature problem of like hoping that a specific tool is going to kind of be the magic bullet for an issue versus we need to change our behavior, which is always, processes are always harder to implement.
it's a point
Well,
in time approach versus a holistic approach. And we'd advocate strongly for taking a
Mhm.
holistic approach to your security posture as compared to saying,
Yeah.
hey, there is one widget to solve it all, because there truly isn't oftentimes one widget to solve it all. Sorry, Jean Michel, go ahead.
yeah, no, that's very believable. And the way you described it just reminded me of kind of classic sales, which is just helping people understand the cost of inaction. So, what does it cost you not doing something? Because it seems like the default is free. If you don't know what the like odds of something happening and what that would cost you, you might not be motivated.
When
So
that's
that
some of the
makes a lot of
tooling,
sense.
that's some of the tooling that we give folks. Again, we've got a PIA tool out there that'll help you do basic risk assessments and no cost to help somebody who might be a small business owner understand what would happen if, and you got to spend time to go through the exercise first and foremost. But if you don't understand the risk to you and your business, then you really don't have a place to start.
And for smaller businesses, what would you say is the biggest risk that people like for people that are not in the security space? What what are the biggest risks that they don't aren't aware of in general?
In general, not understanding what assets you have and what assets are touching your environment, right? So again, it's if you understand what you need to protect is a basic, and you understand how those devices interact with your critical data or your processes or systems, that's the place to start is determining that criticality and then determining, hey,
Mhm.
do we have determining the assets and then, as a secondary, right, determining the criticality of those assets. But I would
Mhm.
advocate, John Michelle, there's again, we have a bunch of great, very basic tooling and papers on cisecurity.org where if you're a small business and you feel like you don't know where to start, we can give you that basic path of where to start. And, you work, if you're a managed service provider out there and you work with a Paxate or another, distribution partner, again, they've all leveraged our controls framework to help paint the picture of if you're working with a customer, where might you start and what is that next step? So be an advocate for just doing some basic education for yourself before just buying it.
Love that, love that. And so as we wrap up, what are you the most excited about for for the growth of CIS? We're filming this. It's going to be holiday break and New Year's. So as we go into the new year, what are you the most excited about?
I'm the most excited about the progress we made around the multi-state ISAC. So we've really, as the people that operate the multi-state ISAC, we've gone through a big transition this year, and we've got great partners in 20 plus states that are aligned with us to build better things with the multi-state ISAC, which will deliver benefits across the nation for our state and locals. And the other thing that I say just on a technical point, as you think about product growth, that I'm really excited about is we have a data lake. We've finally gotten some great tooling embedded into the data lake that's allowed us to build triggering events around churn and growth in an automated way that's amazing. And I'm really excited about the opportunity next year for us to leverage that in a more full way than we have in 25.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Steven. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jean-Michel. Have a great
You too.